Hi, I am Lindsay Juergens, and this is Leaders Like Us. Today, Dr. DeFrank, the principal of Success Academy at Grand Island Public Schools, is joining me. And thank you so much for coming to visit with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Yes, very much appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I know you are a very busy man, and you have a lot of irons in the fire every single day. So this is a big deal. And I would actually like to start, Dr. DeFrank, with just asking you if you could share on what is Success Academy so that anyone watching can kind of get that foundational piece.
So Success Academy is an alternative program. It has evolved over the years. I've been with it for 9 years. We're not the same place we were 9 years ago, thank goodness. We grow. A good alternative program represents the district and district makeup. And we're also, a good alternative program is also very flexible. So it's going to change to the district needs. And that's what we did, especially with the pandemic. So right now, we run 2 half-day sessions at our high school program, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. It's an incentive-based plan where parents sign off. So for instance, a kid will have an academic goal. That's how much they need to get done that day. We're not worried about how much time they've spent in school, whether they get the work done or not. And so that has really worked. We are now serving more students and more graduates are coming in because the kids own their academics.
Right.
I have to come in, I know how much work I have to do that day, and I get it done. Where it used to be where we made a kid stay all day. Most of our conversations were based on, can you get off their equipment watching that video game or playing that video game? So we're not having those conversations anymore. So we are an alternative program. We have about 108 kids in our high school program. We have 15 in our middle school. We are an anxiety-driven program. That's really what we do. So kids with high anxiety, that's probably the #1 reason why students come to us. The high school is 2,600 students. I think it's the 3rd largest high school in the state of Nebraska. And some kids just don't do well in big population areas. And so we offer an alternative to that. We also deal with some pretty significant mental health issues that kids are going through, extreme poverty. Those are probably the 3 most. Now at the middle school level where we have 15 kids, autism, attendance where like kids that wouldn't come to school because the anxiety was so high they wouldn't leave their house. So we're working with them trying to get them out of the house, back into school, and then transition into a traditional program. So we have really kind of a unique thing that we do.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
It is. I just think it's incredibly impressive, and
Thank you.
I'm so thankful for this program because I feel like I'm constantly saying this in a variety of ways, but one size does not fit all. We know that.
That's the future of education.
That is the future of education. And I'm really proud of GIPS for moving into the academies model.
Yes.
And just constantly saying, like, what else can we do? And for you to be leading the Success Academy in the way that you are, I just feel is pivotal to acknowledge the fact that we are not all the same people and we do not have the same needs.
Even within Success Academy, each kid we try to individualize. We don't know what that kid's background is. So yes, we do follow data and we do that.
Yeah.
The part of data that most people don't get is you have to also consider the human element. So you have to know so you have to know what's going on in that student's life.
Yeah.
Okay. That with the data, that's your roadmap.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it's trial and error.
Yep.
And the better relationship you have with the students and the parents, the more likely you're going to get that honest feedback from them, so you can develop a plan that's going to be beneficial to them. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to hear a little bit about your background. And
oh, goodness.
Yes, we want to hear it. And I want, if you will, just share about like what it is that kind of got you to where you are now, why you do what you do.
Well, I've been thinking about this. I turned 55 this past year, so I got my little AARP stuff in the mail. So that and I don't know, when you get to that age, people, when you start looking and get that AARP flyers in your mail, that's when you really start sinking in like, oh, I'm kind of old now. I'm not a young person anymore. So I've been really reflecting back on, the influences of my life. And the first one would be Sister Encarnacion. I grew up in California and Central California, very diverse population, very like Grand Island, as a matter of fact. And I remember one time I was we had to go to Mass every Friday, and I wasn't going to confession, and she saw this. And Sister Encarnacion was about 4'8".
Okay.
And just tough as nails, and from Spain, and with a very heavy Spanish accent.
Yeah.
And she was probably the first one that really taught me about compassion and being patient as an educator. So I wasn't going to confession. She couldn't have that because, you know, if one doesn't go, then we're 8th graders, and the rest of us aren't going to go. So she had me sit at the convent during Mass, and then she goes, "You just think." I'm like, "Okay." And then she would come over and talk to me. And at the time, it really didn't dawn on me like, okay, this is it. But now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, I know what she's doing now, right? Because I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And now that I understand, I learned that from her.
Sure.
So she was kind of my big first influence on compassion, trying to be patient with kids and let kids figure out stuff on their own.
Yeah,
One of the
that's
biggest
important.
issues for, especially in alternative ed, is sometimes we just have to lay back and just watch the kid grow and give them time and offer options. And that's difficult because as educators, we're really like, we want to go and fix things. We're fixers. We like to go do things and fix things. So that was my first kind of where I'm at now. So there's a link there. And so I'm very appreciative of that.
Yeah.
I had 2 in-laws. Both my in-laws are teachers, and they were very high-performing teachers, very well regarded in the profession. So they really taught me how to be a professional and be prepared for class, and you know, and all those things that happens. My best friend, another one was my best friend. He's no longer with us. I met him my freshman year in high school. His mother died of cancer. His dad was a pretty severe alcoholic, wasn't in the family. So he was living, in 9th grade, he was living with his older sisters, who were only in their early 20s.
Right.
So there's really no guidance there. And he got in some trouble in school, but I noticed that the difference between me and him is I had somebody that would come to school and support me if something went wrong, and he didn't. And that was very powerful to me. And that's probably why I went into alternative education, because there's a lot of kids out there that they don't have somebody that will speak up to power.
Right.
You know, and that's important. And so that's how that's probably what led me into alternative education. If I did some deep psychologist, so that's kind of where I got my start in my passion.
So you are then headed into the second part of that question, which is, why are you doing what you do? What is it that keeps you?
Well, one is we have lost generations of family in education because of the way we've run education in schools in the 70s and 80s and 90s. We are starting, and the pendulum always swings very slow in any industry, and it's frustrating, but we're going the right way. The idea with the academies and the individualizing and the small programs, those are things, that's the future for education, and being very specialized. I think kids really crave the relationships. I'm important, right? This is about me, it's not about the school.
Yeah.
And so they do that. So those are the things that are kind of driving me right now. So I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought, so you can edit that piece out.
I really love that you pointed out the relationship piece, because I think sometimes that gets lost, and not just in school or any one trip.
It's human. It's relationship. I was visiting with a couple of local districts that they are changing their alternative programs, and so they came and visited with us. What are we doing? They're not going to be able to do what we do because I have the resources that they don't.
Right.
And so I can be very critical of our district, but it comes from a very, and my boss understands.
Yes.
It comes from a loving way because I want us to be better.
Yes. Of course.
But then I go visit with people from other districts, and then I realize, oh, the reason why our team is very, very successful is because we have a lot of supports that other places don't have. And so that's the one thing I think that districts need to do nationwide. They got to support these programs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're doing that in Grand Island Public Schools. That's why I'm still here.
That's great.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about, I feel like you're an empath, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like you are, and you're really great at understanding this student is here, and I'm just going to respect where they are today, take them as they take them as they are. I mean, and so I feel that there is a high level of empathy within that. Can you talk about that and why that is so crucial in the work that you do?
The kids that I deal with and what our team deals with, they're very honest and they're very real, and they see through, excuse the line, the BS of it all. So you better be real. And one of the things I learned very early on, especially in alternative education, don't make rules that you can't enforce. It's why at Success Academy there aren't a whole lot of rules. There's two really main rules: be nice and communicate. If I can get kids to be, I know, because if you can follow those two, I pretty much can work with anything you're doing.
Right, it's a good foundation.
The other thing is, it's easy as an educator to teach students who come from very stable homes who regard education, have a very high regard for education. It's not so easy to teach kids that don't like school and don't regard education. That's the challenge. And so building a relationship with those kids, and hopefully, and maybe that kid doesn't go on to a four-year school and to some kind of career. Maybe they're just a blue-collar worker, which is fine, which is great, because there's a lot of blue-collar workers who are making more money than I am.
And we need them.
Yeah, but we got to have them. We don't have enough, as a matter of fact, which is why another reason why I really love the Academy program. So when kids are, we're trying to break the cycle. That's one of the long-term goals of Success. I want kids, when they leave public education, to have a positive experience. Okay? I may not teach them calculus, I may not teach them physics, but when they leave, I want them to have, because they're going to have kids. And one of the issues that we've had that nobody really talked about over the last 3 or 4 years is how families had bad experiences in public education. They have kids, they run down public education, it's non-valuable. Those kids pick up on it, and then it's just this continuing cycle. So at Success Academy, we're trying to break that cycle. I want kids to have a positive experience. So when they come back and they have kids, when they send their kids to school, we're like, no, we really enjoyed school. And I think that's probably where empathy comes into play. Is we want to understand who you are, but we also want, the long term is, we want you to value education and see the importance of it. And the more that districts expand the horizons, because most kids, we went to this college, everybody had to go to college. Well, everybody doesn't want to go to college. And so the more opportunities and options we have as a district, the better off we're going to be able to break that cycle.
So can you talk a little bit about what you feel are some of the greatest challenges you face within Success?
The greatest challenges that I face in Success, and our team faces, is public perception. It's constantly breaking down they're going to alternative school, they're a bad kid. No. I didn't go to alternative school, and if you were to ask my teachers when I was in California in the 80s, was I a good student? They would say no. They didn't like me. I was mouthy. I got kicked out of class a lot. I skipped a lot. I flunked a lot of classes. But I came from a very stable home environment, so I didn't slip through the cracks. I made it. So we're trying to change that public perception, and that's why we go out and do the community service projects that we do. These kids have something to offer. It may be not the perception that you see it or in the lens that you see it in, but they have something to offer this community in a positive way. And that's what we're trying to promote. So, and I tell you what's very discouraging is in the field of education, you are still fighting that mindset. And I'm not talking just Grand Island Public School, I'm talking nationally. In alternative education settings, you're still fighting the traditional, especially administrators. Like, I don't want that kid, and it's like, really? Then why are you here? That's my question. And so
you say, hey, I want that kid.
Yeah, I'll take that kid then. That's not a problem at all. So so that's probably the toughest thing. Because it's every year you're just like, really, I'm still having this conversation that these kids they just don't fit in the traditional mode.
gosh, I can. I'll be honest with you. I can think back to when I was in school and a kid would be sent to alternative school.
Yeah.
They were flagged for sure as this kid's a problem, and oh well, he always does this is it's like it was a huge identifier for that person moving forward. You're a bad egg.
Yeah.
And then life happens, and I grow up, and I look around, and I'm like, wow, what a narrow-minded perspective. I'm not saying I solely had that. It was definitely a societal piece there.
Yes.
And what a narrow perspective to have, to say this kid is now like anointed bad.
So I grew up. That's what I thought.
Yeah. And the more you learn, you're like, wow, no, it sounds like an incredible opportunity that just better fits that person.
We always tell the kids that when they get in, that you just hit the lottery.
Yeah.
Basically, because we're gonna individualize. We're gonna do those things that hopefully you feel welcome, and this is a safe place for you.
And your teachers tell me that too.
Yeah,
your teachers report out that same content, that you are leading a very unique program, and those kids are so much better off in that space because it meets their needs way better than a traditional model.
It's truly individualized.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I think that we do differently here at Grand Island Public Schools, and I've been doing this for 25 years, is the attitude between the high school and the Success Academy. Mr. Gilbertson started at senior high the year that I started at. So he was at the central office, but when he came in and I came in, we kind of talked. And we're like, we're going to break down some barriers. So a lot of our kids, they still take classes at Gish.
Sure, yeah.
They go to all the dances. They graduate. They don't have their own graduate. They graduate with all the other students.
Still a part of this
Exactly.
School. Yeah.
But it's an option. We don't force them to do it. But if you want to do it and you want to take a class and you're going to do the things that you need to keep that class, go for it. We're good. And that's a lot of differences, because I would still say a lot of districts out in the nation, when they're dealing with they don't want their kids. You're an alternative school. That's where you're at. Stay over there.
Right.
We're not like that. We're just another option.
Yeah.
And so
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell me what makes you most proud in what you do.
It's got to be. There's two things.
Okay.
One is the look on a kid's face, because we are a self-paced curriculum. So kids, you do have a daily goal. We're trying to get you there, and you can work faster. But there's this kind of magic light when a senior in high school, they've been struggling, and all of a sudden they hit 200 credits and you need 240 to graduate. The light just kind of goes off. And then you're like, they're excited to be at school. They're like, hey, I'm going to come in, I'm going to finish. And so they do all that, and then they finish and they come in, the teacher brings the kid in the office. I'm usually in my office, and I hear something, so I'll yell out to them, and that's a great kind of that's like, oh, it's the payoff.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah.
The other thing is when we're out doing community projects, and you get a kid to join you that is basically a wallflower. They're very shy. They're very introverted. They don't like going out and doing these things, but then they try. And then they find out they have fun. And then you're standing back, and they're having just a typical teenage conversation with another student.
Oh, yeah.
It's that simple. And those are the things that you're like, okay, this is what I do.
Yeah. Oh, that's what.
Yeah, because you're breaking that cycle.
Yeah.
You're helping to break that cycle. We don't fix kids. We offer a lot of options, and we hope to break the cycle so they can move forward.
Yeah.
And that's really what we kind of try to do.
You're kind of supporting them in being brave and stepping out of their box a little bit.
It's okay to do that
at your own pace.
Yes.
But I'm nudging you, and
it's okay to make mistakes.
Oh man, isn't that a
because they
life
see me
lesson?
make mistakes all the time.
Gosh.
So most of the projects I've done over the 9 years have failed.
Yeah.
I got no problem with
That's
it.
life.
Because
Yeah.
I tried. If I wouldn't have tried, then I would have been upset with myself.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
And so I think when you model that for kids, and kids see, like, well, he failed. Well, yeah, I'm back up the next day. I'm going, and the teachers are doing it, and so the kids are doing it, and that's what we want.
Right.
There's a real issue in our society about kids trying to be perfect. They're afraid to make mistakes. We have to get rid of that mentality.
Absolutely.
Because you can't grow unless you make mistakes. Now, do we want to make mistakes on purpose? No. But we want to try, and if we do, you reflect back, what did we do wrong? What did we do right? Let's move forward.
Yep.
And that's really what we're after.
I think that's incredibly important. Yes. So you are leading teachers in a space that can be super complex. I mean, any teacher is going to have major challenges all the time. But you are leading teachers who are in the throes of challenges, it feels like probably constantly. And I just wonder what you do to keep them motivated, keep like their tank full enough to show up again and again. And what does that look like from your perspective?
Well, first of all, you got to have some humility. And that's where I've been trying to work in the last 5 or 6 years, just professionally. Being more humble, being more, because I do better when I'm humble. And that pays off with my teachers. If I get too cocky and I get too pushy, I have a staff that's very unique. They will push back. So we have a very open communication. They're not afraid to call me out when I do something wrong, and I feel that gives them power. I don't feel like I can do the same thing to them. Like, hey, you messing with that kid, so what are we going to do about it? It's not like if we make a mistake, we're not sitting there. I blame you, or it's my fault. Okay, let's be honest. We made a mistake. Where did we mess up? Let's have that conversation so we can fix it and move on. And that empowers the teachers. They're getting to a point now where they're pushing more. They're not afraid to make those mistakes, and that's what's good. So I think by supporting them in that, and then trying stuff that they want to do that they know that I don't want to do, that's a huge thing. So if a teacher comes up and they have an idea, and I'm like, I don't think that's going to work, but we're going to try it, and I'm going to do it with fidelity, right? I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it my whole heart, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't work, we're going like, okay, some of the stuff worked and some didn't. Let's figure this out.
Still learn from it.
So the teachers are empowered. I really love that.
I love that too. I love that you use the word empower there, because to promote that power, to promote your voice, to say, I want to hear from you. There's so much. You
got to give up something as a leader, though. You can't, and that's hard, because because in our society, you're leading, you're in charge, you make the decisions. Well, President Eisenhower, he was one of his quotes, and I'll mess up the quote, but basically is, when things go wrong, the leader stands up and takes the ownership of it. When things go right, make sure everybody else gets all the credit. That's kind of where I'm trying to go to. So I want teachers to take chances. Now I get frustrated because I don't think they take enough chances, and they're like, "Well, I'm like, well, that's your job." I'm like, "Well, I want you guys to be along with us." So we want to do that, but empowering the teachers, listening to them, and then again, it goes back to the relationships that we have together. They are comfortable when they came. Like the other day, I had a staff member said, "Ken, too many." I told the staff, "I'm gonna push you this year. I'm pushing because I'm frustrated. I'm tired of not getting traction. It's been 3 years of this, and I'm done. We're going for it." I said, "But you have to let me know when I push too hard." And so 2 weeks ago, one of the staff members said, "Ken, enough. I can't. You got to back off." And so we backed off. And so they have that trust. We have trust with each other. I'll push them as far as they can, but they know, like, hey, I'm done. You got to back off on the number of kids we're taking in. So that's kind of how it works. You gotta give up some of that power and be okay with it. And it's not always going to go your way. But in the long run, when we look back every year and like, okay, what did we do? We served more students, more kids graduated, more kids got jobs, more kids are in a better mental space. Okay, we did our job.
The work you're doing, absolutely.
Then we did our job.
Then you're having an impact.
Exactly, and that's
meaningful.
And the teachers, that's what the teachers want. They don't want to just go through the motions. So and I think the difference between an alternative setting that we have and a traditional, my teachers have to learn. They got to know 24 core subjects and 99 electives. And you have to be able to go with 10 or 12 kids, Algebra 1, English 1, History 1, and you got to be able to jump. So your mind has to be able to jump. And that's something you can learn, but it takes practice. A traditional, well, they may have 140 kids, but they're teaching maybe 2 preps, so they only have, it's both incredibly difficult.
No kidding.
But they're different.
Now
the difference is we have the ability to, I think, have the ability to connect on a deeper level with a kid on a relationship, because we don't, my teacher only has 24 to 30 kids. where as a traditional teacher, we're asking them to build relationships with 140 kids.
Right.
It's incredibly difficult.
Yes, it is.
And so we have to learn how to break things down. The academy model was one great step in that, making a small learning community within a big learning community.
Yep.
So you can make those things.
Right.
We just have to keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah,
Right.
just have
We're
to
not-
keep
the work
going.
is not done.
It's not done. And a very important lady that taught me a lot about compassion was Dr. Susie Busby. She works for Omaha Public Schools. And she said, Ken, it's a process, it's not a product. And I'm like, okay, I get
There we
it.
go.
So there's really no end.
Right.
We're just trying to move forward, make sure kids are in a better spot. So.
Well, I appreciate that so much.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate the work you do for our students, and I know you have a lot of people who have a lot of nice things to say about
Oh, that's
how
nice.
invested you are. So
yeah.
we appreciate you.
Sometimes I push it a little too hard with the bosses, but I think they understand where it's coming from love.
I think they do too, yes. Dr. DeFrank, thank you again.
Thank you.
And again, I am Lindsay Juergens with Leaders Like Us.